Hi, I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. I am in the process of melting down my wax cappings here, which have a bit of honey in there. A couple of days ago we poured off the good honey, which we had at a relatively low temperature that warmed up enough for the honey to run out the bottom of the tank with the wax floating on the top. Now I've turned the temperature up to above the melting point of the wax, and so the wax is liquefied as well. That allows a bigger separation between the layer of honey and the layer of wax, as the wax will concentrate up at the top. But along with it, it'll be a lot of junk in it called slum gum. So we'll have a look inside the tank and see how it's looking at the moment. We are at 160 degrees Fahrenheit, just under. And you can see it's all liquid here, with some floating bits and pieces and bits of comb, and which are pupil casings, that sort of thing, bits of wood from broken frames, etc., bits of wire down at the bottom, no doubt. And what we're going to do is we're going to pour off some of the honey, which will now be pretty dark. I'm using a metal sieve now because those plastic sieves are much too fine for this job, and when they get covered in melted wax they would be really hard to clean, whereas a sieve like this is going to be easy to clean. It doesn't really need that much cleaning. So start the process. We should have a fair amount of honey coming off to start with. Now this will be burnt honey. Open up the valve a little. So this honey will still be really good for things like barbecue sauces and that sort of thing. Kind of like the taste of burnt honey to a degree. And although we're not going to have clumps of wax coming out, what we are going to have is clumps of that slum gum, the pupil casings and various detritus that accumulate in the combs. You can smell the honey is a bit burnt here. Now we're starting to get some of the crud blocking it up. Open the valve up a little bit more. Now I'm going to have to use two hands shortly. So we're going to put this back. Now, I don't think there's any wax coming through yet, but we are still getting some of the sludge. Now I'm opening up the valve entirely here. Got a few bees floating around in the barn, and they just love the smell of melted wax. So what I'm going to do with this is just tip it out. Now the sieve is free. I think we're starting to get wax in there. In fact, I can see the way it's moving it up. We're starting to get wax in here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm I put a lid on that bucket just to make it like a tabletop. Dirty lid will do. Yeah, we're starting to get wax now. So we're right at the layer where we have wax and honey coming through. So let's see what it looks like. Yeah, definitely a mixture of wax and honey. And I'm going to stop it for a second just to show you. If you see in here, we've got the dark stuff at the bottom is the honey. The clear stuff at the top is the wax. So this is how you separate out the clean wax from the honey, in this case here. Okay, we'll just stop there. Now we're going to pour this off separately. Now what I'll do is pour the wax off, because this honey stays at the bottom and the wax floats at the top. So just like I did with the tin cans and things, you can separate out the dirty wax from the clean wax. I'm going to pour the clean wax into these containers. Should be roughly 2 pounds, very roughly. Now you'll see here what I've got is a layer of honey and clean wax there. So if I'm very careful, I can just pour it out gently. So I'll just keep this separate. And so far what we've got is a couple of 2 pound blocks and a bit. Let's pour off some more. These sort of things at the dollar store are wonderful. Same with those sieves. Loaf tins make great purchases from the dollar store, as do these little washing up tubs, which you can also use for mite treatments. So again, we're getting some honey through, starting to get a little bit of the slum gum. But this is all wax now. The honey has gone down, and now this is all wax, which is going down, and floating on top of this wax will be a lot of that crud that we looked at from the top. Okay, so there's relatively little honey in this one compared to the previous one. it's mostly wax. So we'll set up here again. Showing I've got quite a bit of crud in there, but a lot less than the previous one. Okay. That's what we can get before we start getting the slum through. Set up a few bigger containers for the wax. This block off. And I'll load this one up. These tubs, if filled roughly the same depth, make about a 5-pound block, very approximately. But I weigh it before it's sold anyway. You see we're getting very little of the tiny little bits through. Bits of honey left there, with a layer of wax, still melted. That's roughly a 5-pound block, maybe not quite, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, roughly 22 pounds so far. Getting very little honey through now. It's mostly bits of slum. And these bits that are stuck on the sieve and put down into this pot, these are not going to be wasted. They're just going to be put back into the melter for when we turn the temperature right up. Could do with another cleaner sieve. I did have one. I wonder if I can find one. There we go. Now we're starting to get blocked up a bit here. Okay. And we'll be pouring another. Let's see. Move this over here. I've room for another one of those. Not quite. Let's see. Now for where I want to use this wax for rolling onto combs, I don't have to worry about a bit of this rubbish goes in. But I may sell some of this as premium wax for cosmetics and that sort of thing. Okay, that'll do for now. So we've got about 5, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 27 pounds-ish, 28 pounds. Roughly 28 pounds approximately, plus the stuff that's still in these. And these are going to go back into the melter. Down here, you see there's still quite a bit of wax down there. That liquid is still wax. But we will recover that. That's the other time-consuming part of this. So with a bit of honey and wax here, that can go back in. And when this cools, I'll scrape the wax off here, and that will go back in as well. We'll recover all of this. When this cools, that'll go back in. I've got a mixture of the burnt honey in here. And wax there. See what happens when the honey is, you get this layer of wax that had floated on the top, which is perfectly good as it is, and hot. But we'll melt that out some more. So that's cooled a bit, that'll go back in. Hot, 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 hot. And a bit of wax on the top there, about 3 gallons of burnt honey there, which will be useful in its own right. So this is day 5 of the wax melting. I'll probably come back and drain off a little bit more of that wax from the bottom here, and then what we're going to do when we've taken out as much this way as we can, what I'm going to do is put maybe 20 gallons of water in here, and 20 gallons of water, and I'll turn the heat right up, and that will really get into all that slum in there. It'll get into the wax, and as the wax melts, it will float on top of the water. The water will dilute the honey, so it'll just be a dirty water, but I'll also press a sieve down into it to try and get the slum down under that water. So as the wax comes out of it, it floats to the top, And then what we'll do is turn it off, let it cool down, and then pour off the dirty water, and I'll take the biscuit of wax off the top, and it'll have a layer of dirt on it, but it's going to be relatively easy to clean. So that's day 5 of the wax processing method. I'm Peter Cowan, the Bee Whisperer. See you next time for the conclusion of this process.